Thank you for being here and welcome to our Monday evening speaker series with author Emma Stevens, who's also known as Linda Pevac. She's the award-winning author of two earlier memoirs, The Gathering Place, An Adoptee Story, and A Fire is Coming. Emma's third memoir, Choosing to Breathe, takes readers back to the gathering place where the younger parts of herself discover what it means to integrate their identities as Emma releases multiple layers of trauma. We really appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank you, Ty. I'm so excited to be here again, and I feel so honored to be helping you celebrate your 38th year of providing resources to adopted people and foster care. I appreciate everyone that's joining us tonight, and thank you for being here. I am Linda Pevac, aka Emma Stevens, and I used Emma to be my author's name to author 3 books. The first one, I won't go through them again because Ty just mentioned them all. But yes, in this third book, I do tell the story of how Linda and Emma are one and the same, and they have merged. So fully integrated now. There's I'm not incognito anymore. So that feels really good from a personal standpoint. But you can call me Linda, you can call me Emma. I'm both. So I was posed the question of what to title tonight's session. And I came up with what happens when we make a conscious decision to make our identities more than only being an adoptee. May I take a poll of how many are adopted here, or do we have a mix of MPE and or maybe late discovery? Well, it doesn't matter about really, which category we fall into because this really applies, it's really the human condition. My book, Choosing to Breathe, is about how not to be more perfect, but how to be more human. And so the answer to that question about how can we, if we make the decision to become more than our identity or what we've limited our identity to be, the answer is that we can live a fuller life and a more satisfying life. And then you might ask, well, how do you do that? And I think that being dedicated to self-development and personal growth, which is something that I decided for myself I really, really wanted to have. And the reason is growing up in the family system I had and well into adulthood, I didn't really have a sense of well-being. And certainly not one that was sustainable. I may have been, periodically happy, but the sense of well-being was really not in my grasp. And so choosing to breathe in a nutshell is the essence of having a mindset of self-determination rather than going with the status quo. And if you know about, when we're in fight or flight and we're not choosing to breathe, then it's like we think we're being chased by the bear and everything else goes offline. We don't feel hunger. We don't feel anything other than getting out of the way of that bear. But what we really need to choose at that point is to fully breathe, because that we know that it de-escalates our emotional dysregulation by slow, deep breathing. But it's kind of crazy because when you're in that state, the hardest thing to do is to breathe. And if I had it to do over again to title the book, I would have called it Choosing to Breathe, especially when life is difficult. Because it's easy to breathe when things are groovy and happy and easy, but the hard times come, and that's when, to be kind to ourselves and to be good to ourselves, we need to remember how to fully breathe instead of being a chest breather. And now I think I'll go back just a little bit with my background and how I became a chest breather. And by that, I just mean that when we fully breathe, inhale and exhale, it fosters a sense of well-being. But if you're a chest breather and kind of always in fight or flight, then that's why it's not good for your body. It's not good for your mind, body, or spirit. So the background is that I am an adoptee. I had an adoptive brother, 2.5 years older, and we were both adopted from the same adoption agency. I was in foster care for 3 months before my adoption. And what I truly believe set in motion my hypervigilance, my inability to breathe fully, is it probably started in utero, to tell you the truth, because I was swimming in the waters of being an unwanted pregnancy. And that transmitted to me as a baby. And then being born, my birthing process was thwarted, as all of ours that were, adopted at infancy. So it interrupted that human process of where a mother gets her hormones, oxytocin, which is the love bonding hormone, and the baby does too. And then the mother and the baby have this mirroring effect of adoring each other. And at that point, they don't even realize that they're separate, right? There's just one whole. But for infant adoption, that was severed. And I truly believe that that was the moment where I became a chest breather, just hoping that my birth mother I was going to hold my breath until she came back. And she never did, right? So, but I never learned how to breathe. I kept chest breathing for a good portion of my life. And it set in motion this hypervigilance that I've had to really, really work on to identify, because I really feel like you have to name it to change it. I always am a big proponent for knowing the why, because I don't think you can do much with it if you're just operating in a dark room and not being able to know what you're up against. So, and also through thinking about that thwarted birthing process, it led me to understand really what my core issue is and was. I mean, I guess it is still to an extent, but I've learned tools that we're going to talk about here in a minute of how to kind of overrule my thoughts of who I thought I was, who my parents, who were very authoritative, told me who I was, and and then who society told me. And that's true for all of us. We are conditioned by all different kinds of elements. And the younger we are, the more thick and fibrous that conditioning is, and the harder it is to stop in midstream and say, are these true stories? Is this what I believe about myself? And so the core issue I realized was deprivation. And it was deprivation of where's my mother? Remember that book by P.D. Eastman, Are You My Mother? I really resonate with that book. As silly as it is, it really holds a lot of truth for a lot of adoptees that I can see when I look back at my life now. My pattern was looking for a savior, looking for a mom, looking for just anything that would help me breathe, because I felt like I couldn't breathe on my own. So as a result, when I came into adulthood, I was like the walking wounded. And I was making bad decisions of bonding with people I shouldn't bond with, that weren't healthy for me. And because I wasn't healthy myself in my thinking or even knowing how to regulate my emotions, because I was never taught that in my family system. It was also an alcoholic home. That's kind of important to know, because it accentuated the chaos I already felt inside myself, that it just set in motion where I was just bumping into wall after wall. So, what really changed everything was a catalyst. Excuse me, I'm going to get a sip of water real quick. As so often happens for all of us, we have these opportunities in life, right? Where we come to a fork in the road where it's decision-making time. We can either stay with the status quo of what's familiar, what's comfortable, what we've always learned, especially from our conditioning. But sometimes a catalyst can really get our attention, and we may not have any choice other than to really analyze things and really make a decision of, I can't keep going like this. This is not working. And for me, it was an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And I almost, in a strange way, bonded with alcohol because I was looking for a connection. That thwarted birthing process set in motion in me to look for either a person, place, or thing to replace that and make me feel okay. So it was almost, I'm also grateful that I had this catalyst because it shook me to my core. And I don't wish that upon anyone, but it was a big enough thing to get me to really look at the relationship I had with myself, which was not good. I had very low self-esteem, and I was believing all the incorrect narratives that everyone had told me all my life. And so when I started looking at, are these things even true? I decided that it was time to deconstruct, dismantle, and dissect myself using radical awareness and resilience. And what helped me a lot was the support groups of, it's a group called, it's a 12-step group called Alcohol, Children, let's see, how do we put it? ACOA, Alcoholic, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. It's called ACOA, and it's a 12-step program. And it also includes if you've come from a dysfunctional family, which we all have to some degree, right? But some of us, it's more on the spectrum. And in this support group, I was really able to hear other people sharing things they'd gone through, and it resonated with me. But really what hit me in between the eyes was in the ACOA book, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. I knew it would come to me. There's a 14 list, 14 issues laundry list is what they call it. And it's everything from codependency to abuse to neglect. It goes on and on. And I was so amazed. I thought, who from this book has been at my household to see what was going on in my childhood? It was just amazing. And I really was able to start to restructure my brain and asked myself, what do I believe is true? What are my likes and dislikes? And when you've come from an authoritative family, it's really hard. It's almost like being in a cult because you have to break that hold and the control that it's had over you. There's something called the bite model. If any of you have heard of, there's a leading cult expert, and he, in his dissertation to get his degree, he developed the bite model, and it's an acronym for control their behavior, control the amount of information they get, control their thoughts, and tell them the emotions they're allowed to have. And that's my upbringing in a nutshell. And I hate to say that adoption sometimes, the way, at least in the baby scoop era, the way it was conducted was very cult-like, and it was very controlling and manipulative. And, you know, I grew a huge heart for my birth mother after I found out the nature of what she went through at a maternity home and how I had not known a fuller story of what she went through, because not only was my birth thwarted, my process, hers was too. And when she chose to relinquish me because of coercive control, it set in motion her trauma and mine. So, okay, so back to how I started to get healthy. I decided to have a mindset that anything, I looked through my life through a lens of, is it healthy? Is it loving? What's my motivation? And so I was able to be very honest with myself and develop a loving relationship with myself so I could love others better. In that I started to pull apart everything that I thought I knew was true. And then I decided that, there were too many things that weren't aligning with my new mindset. So I looked at everything through that mindset, and I was able to say, what would I like my story to be instead? And the first thing is the not enoughness that adoptees some have. I certainly had that. And I was able to say that, or being an unwanted baby, I was an unwanted pregnancy, but my birth mother didn't know me. And so I was able to say that, that was, I was assuming responsibility for others, and it was really, I had no say in my relinquishment or my adoption. No one even knew me. So it had nothing to do with me. So once I really took a breath about that, I was able to release that I'm a burden, that I'm unwanted, that I was a bad baby somehow, and that's why I wasn't good enough to stay for. And so once I started releasing that, other things followed suit. And I started having these little victories of where I started feeling better. And I should also say that I was amazed at this support group when I found out that abstaining from alcohol was only the very little tip of the iceberg. I had much more to learn than just putting that down. And I thought that was a huge feat. And it is. But when I started hearing about emotional sobriety, that's when my life really started changing, because I was introduced to things that I should have been introduced to the whole time I was growing up. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so I did when I could, when I knew that there was a thing called emotional sobriety. And what that really means is emotional intelligence or emotional maturity, regulating your emotions. And a lot of times that could just mean taking a pause before you speak or answer or make a decision, and ask yourself, look through that lens of that mindset. Does it line up with health? Is it part of my mindset? Is it loving? What's my motivation? And so that helps me get closer, and as I practice that more and more, I get closer. And so that's what I mean by the victories start to add up. And all of a sudden you feel this snowball effect of, I'm having more sense of well-being a lot of times now, where I used to wake up feeling, like I was full of holes and I didn't even know why. So after sometimes, guys, all I did was go to that support meeting and go home and just think about what I learned, because I had been reduced down to such a naked state, if you will, because of the deconstruction. And I needed to do that, because I had to just really reevaluate everything. But eventually I did start going back into the world and had to deal with people. And I started working on relationships, and I started making amends, not only to myself, but to others, and practicing all these new tools. And I will say that some people go the psychedelic route of having breakthroughs. I personally felt for me that it would be a relapse. It would be a break in my sobriety. And because I found another way, I believe, to achieve my creativity and curiosity. And I did that through a modality in therapy called EMDR. And what it did was sets me into a meditative state. I don't know if you know anything about eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, but you sometimes hold handheld sensors that are meant to vibrate right, left, and it coordinates with your right, left brain to store these memories and sometimes deal with them for the first time because we ignored them when they happened. And through this process, you're able to store them in a healthier way and maybe even move them through. But it was during that process that I visualized the gathering place. And it grew from a picture that I had, which is actually the picture on the cover of the Gathering Place book of, again, the tree symbolism of the big old oak tree with the thick trunk and the roots sinking down deep. We all love that because we resonate with how meaningful that is, so stable and secure, right? And we've almost always been looking for safety. And this picture also has a swing attached to this tree, which is lovely because it acts as a portal for the people that I introduce to the gathering place, which are really parts of me, my younger parts, and they get to swing on the swing because as we know that motion going back and forth, it's almost like a little bit like EMDR, it transports you into a meditative state where you otherwise maybe couldn't tell a story. Maybe it was too emotional or you didn't feel like it. But being in a swing helped my characters tell me what they were thinking and what they were feeling. And EMDR really helped with that, coupled with another modality called internal family systems that was developed by Richard Schwartz. And it's short for IFS. And it's suggesting that we all have little personalities within us that make up the totality of who we are. And I'm not talking on the spectrum of dissociative identity disorder, DID, that would be diagnosable. But this is that we do all have different parts of ourselves that have, different wants and needs. And the biggest thing to know about them is that they're kind of frozen in time. And they're trying to get our attention, trying to say, you ignored me, or my family ignored me, and I need some help. And so as our adult selves, and what I do at the gathering place, is I invite these younger parts to say, I see you, and you are welcome here, and I love you, and thank you so much for everything you did to keep us safe when we were younger. Because they need the data that I have as an adult. And for me to unburden them and say, it was never your job to be the parentified child. It was never your job to take care of your adoptive parents and their fragility of not being able to speak about adoption and what it meant, and trying to keep your story from you. And so what I find by talking with these different parts is that they're feeling safe. They come, when they do show up in my present everyday life, I'm so aware of it now. I'm like, who's this younger part talking right now? And I'm able to pause and reflect and think, okay, younger part, you're welcome, but can you please just sit beside me right now and let me handle this because I have more information, and you, younger part, need to be a child. You need to unburden yourself with things that never should have been on your plate. And it's really fantastic, the things that can happen when you get to know yourself in a way that maybe you were never encouraged to do before. It's really quite amazing, remarkable. Another remarkable thing was that when I started writing these 3 books, which I truly see as stepping stones, that they all build upon each other. And you can almost see my healing in real time from the first to the second to the third. And I see they are complete now, okay? There's not going to be a fourth one. This is it, 1, 2, and 3. But the healing that happens when you put pen to paper, and I encourage everyone to write to heal, whether you have any intention of publishing or you could just write it for yourself. That's so self-honoring. Write it for yourself. Your story matters. Or you can write it for your family as a legacy, or you can just, put it in a drawer. The important thing is getting it outside yourself. And there's so much more that can be seen, and you don't even know it once you get it out of you and onto paper. It's just that things will come up from the words that you maybe could not have seen if you hadn't written it down. And I'll tell you a little story of when I give certain talks and people ask, how do I start to get to know myself better? And I say, do a timeline. Do a timeline of your life. And you may start with one piece of paper, and it'll be, I was born, I went to school, I graduated, I got married. And it may be as simple as that. Mine started out on one piece of paper. And then by the time that I had done some really deep interior work on myself, I had taped together about 12 pages of my timeline. And before, if you had asked me, I would have said, my life is random. All the things that have occurred have no relationship to anything. But once I started really going into these 12 sheets of paper, I could so clearly see this connected to this, and just on and on. It's all connected. It's all, and you can see these patterns and sequencing of where your life becomes so much, I don't know, more real, because I was like, how could I have not seen this before? But once I got it on paper, it really helped me. And I did all of that before I started writing my stories. The second book is called A Fire is Coming, and it's a cautionary tale of when we go to counseling, when we seek therapy, which I'm a huge proponent for counseling, but I also was exploited by a therapist, a psychologist, that didn't have my best interest at heart. And what better profession for a sociopath to hide in than a helping profession that you have to walk in and be vulnerable? That's just part of therapy. You have to. And before you know it, you could lose your sense of autonomy. You could be back to the bite model: behavior, information, thought, and emotions. People that like to have coercive control, they all use the same playbook. So this whole book is about my true story, and it kind of reads like a psychological thriller, um, to tell the tale of how it happened. It could happen to anyone too, not just because I was an adoptee, but my vulnerabilities happened to be, at that time, being adopted. And I was also in a marriage that was not doing great. And I came from a very, very dysfunctional home. And I carried all of that stuff with me into my adult life. So I gave my life to a psychologist that did not, she had a secret agenda. And this book tells how I got indoctrinated, how I was groomed, and then how I escaped, which is the best part of it. And, it all led to freedom because, I mean, it was truly a catalyst for me also, but I wasn't ready for the full complete set of coming out of the fog of my life until the next catalyst happened. But it was an important one too. So that was book 2. Book 3 is now Choosing to Breathe, and it means so much to me because it's not just a book. It's not just me trying to, finish and publish. I had to make it my true healing process, and that not only am I choosing to breathe correctly, to where I'm not a chest breather anymore, and I get that sense of well-being. It's also that I cherish emotional sobriety and that I now know what love is because in my family system, I got a very convoluted idea of what the meaning of love was. To me, love meant abandonment. Love meant we did this for your own good. Your mother gave you away. So many things. Um, we we hurt you because we love you. You know, very strange. And so once I was able to break free from that old narrative of what I decided was not even true, I got to say who I wanted to be. And all of that is in the choosing to breathe, as well as I return to the gathering place because it's really helpful. It's helped me have these conversations with myself. And I like to chuckle and say it's Emma 2.0 now because I just didn't know as much when I wrote the first book of The Gathering Place, which is okay, right? We're all on our journey, and it's not shameful or our fault to be anywhere on that journey. So, but by book 3, I'm really getting down deep. I'm really getting to my core issue of deprivation. I'm dealing with the part of me that is kind of scared and wants to stay stuck, which is about, kind of like what this talk is all about tonight is what if we chose to expand? What if we chose to transform? What if we decided that yes, I'm adopted, but there's so much more. And there's so much more that I want to be and am becoming. And I want to honor the integration that's happened within me as a result of developing this new story. And it's something that we can all do. But you know what? I have to choose it daily. I have to make that decision daily to look through that mindset, remember my story, remember what I know to be true. And you know what? Even when sometimes I shoot myself in the foot because I'm like, dang, I said that I was going to be, only doing healthy things. And then something comes up where, I don't know, I have a human tendency to want to talk back to someone or behave in a less than healthy way. I'm like, dang it, I made this pact with myself that I was going to, even in the awkward, most difficult times, I was going to choose to breathe, even when life was difficult. So I catch myself. And even when I don't catch myself, I come back online so much faster now because the more you practice anything, the better you get. And the more it becomes your new default. And it's your new familiar because we can rewire our pathways. And I truly believe that is true, that it hurts me when I do hear some adoptees or non-adoptees talk about, well, this is just the way I am and I can't change it. This is, and I feel like it's a little bit of a cop-out because doing the work is difficult. I will give them that. But I think you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your loved ones to do your interior work so you can be good to yourself and good to others, good to society. It's just, I feel like in the end, it's so much easier to be that way than to not be that, because you develop so many, problems and big obstacles. And the longer it festers, the worse it is. Those secrets have a way of coming out. And, it makes me think of a late discovery adoptee or misattributed that if they had just had the awkward conversation in the beginning, it would have been just uncomfortable, yes, but what is it going to be like 40, 30, 40, 50 years from now? Imagine that. And imagine the rupture that can happen by keeping secrets that you thought, well, I thought they would never come out. I thought DNA would never be a thing. That happened to me with my birth father that I met. I didn't know I met him. I thought I did, but he told me he was not my birth father, that he had only helped out a friend and put his name on my birth certificate. Well, DNA came out 30 plus years later, and sure enough, his surname was on all these people that came back as close relatives to me. He wasn't on there, but my half brother was, and my cousins were, my aunts, and all that. Sadly, by that time, he had already passed, so I didn't get to meet him a second time to say, you are my birth father. But, I understand he had his reasons, and I don't want to speculate what that was. But my point is that wouldn't it just be easier? Because our secrets only make us sick. And it usually doesn't just stop at one secret. It's usually, more and more and more. Oh, I see I have a few things in the chat. I'm sorry, I haven't been looking. Oh, you're identifying Mandy adoptee. Yes, thank you for being here. Adult children about alcoholics and dysfunctional families. I think that was an add-on later because they realized that that laundry list I told you about really applies to almost any family, but to certain degrees, right? Oh, thank you for writing A Fire is Coming. Mm-hmm. I'm going to share with you guys that I'm part of a teaser. It's not a documentary yet. It's to promote hashtag therapy too. And what that means is it's piggybacking on the movement, the social movement of Me Too. And this is called hashtag therapy too, because so many victims are not believed, just like, other essay situations of they're not believed. And so a lot of people don't come forward. And that's true in the, medical and the therapy part of it, that a client is just too afraid and the shame is so heavy that it's really hard to tell someone that you did that willingly. I mean, you didn't do it willingly. It was a bounded choice, which means it's really no choice at all, right? But it's really hard to get these people to come forth. And I'm very proud to be a part of a possible documentary that is going to be, the teaser is going to be developed next week, actually. So anyway, thank you for appreciating that. And, the first thing we ask our adoption constellation to do before reunion is go get some therapy. Make sure you're up for this task, because reunion can be really messy and it can trigger a lot of your younger parts of things you haven't resolved yet. And you can maybe react in ways that you didn't really mean to, but you showed up as a younger part that wasn't very healed. So I'm sorry I lost my train of thought.
Very good. I really appreciate the way you outlined, um, like how you really, through your story, described really well how the parts work and EMDR can work together into figuring out, like which voice is taking the lead at which time in your thought process. Um, I think that's a really rich description that can bring that to life for people. Um, but I guess as I was wondering, it's also a good way of understanding trauma through the lifespan and developmentally, which is something I'm personally really interested in. What was that like for you in putting that together, like understanding trauma as a young person and, as you've matured and had different life experiences?
Well, as a child, I knew something was wrong, how I felt and the whole adoption thing, but I had no language, as none of us do. And if you don't have any input of anyone giving you information of what you're feeling is absolutely normal to be in a house of strangers, basically, with adoptive parents that you don't know until all of a sudden you're living with them. And it helped me when I started writing, went back to your idea about characters, when I wrote about my parts, and I had to be really honest with myself of what does that part look like? What does it feel like? What does it look, how does it dress? What would it say in this situation? It was almost like a character development, but based on a true story. And so these people, these younger parts really came to life for me, and I named many of them. And so they became really very rich and part of my life. And I do this even present day of using the gathering place daily. And I find it very helpful in now understanding trauma. And I'd like to go back to that younger part that had no language and say, you are exactly normal to be questioning how, what's going on? Why can't I ask where I'm from? Um, and actually understanding that none of that was my fault. I didn't set any of that in motion. None of it was my responsibility to carry, but I did. I did carry it. Um, so, yeah, I would encourage people if they are interested in knowing themselves better and knowing their parts. If you start writing about it, they really come to life even more. And they can all have like a relationship. There's a part in the book that I love where they're all at the pool and they have this pool party and they're talking with each other and saying, how do you feel about this? And figuring life out. And the pool happened to be a very healthy place for me in my youth where I loved it so much, the pool. And so I get to create that through my imagination at the gathering place. So I really was happy that I included that in the book. Did I answer your question?
You did. I think it's a great illustration. So if anyone's curious about how that all can look and feel, the book does a great job with that. Like, I appreciate you sharing that. Um, it, the other part of your book that I found really resonated was the way you spoke about being a caregiver for your adopted parents and the relationship that you had before they became ill. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I would, because I think a lot of people are in that same boat present day. I've heard of new support groups coming up of, how to handle aging when our parents are getting older, and do they go to assisted living or do they stay in their own home, or and if they do stay in their own home, I describe pretty vividly what a feat that is to turn a home into a hospital. And by the end, my parents were in hospital beds, in gowns, and we had equipment that was covering the dining room table that we used to have Thanksgiving on. And I was caring for people that were my captors. I mean, honestly, I loved my parents, but again, I don't know that it wasn't a trauma bond. It wasn't, the Stockholm syndrome. because their love hurt me in a lot of ways. So it was hard for me to be dedicated every day to say, I made a choice to walk them through this part of their lives. I had to weigh what I would be okay with. And I came out with, I would feel, when I looked through my lens of my mindset, I would feel better at walking them through than walking away. And as I hear so many now having no contact, and yes, I had every right to walk away, but for me personally, I just felt like there were a lot of things I learned through their death and watching them in that process. Um, in the book, I talk about them being my South Star, which there is no South Star, which is the meaning that it showed me exactly where to go to get to the North Star. That was my wall that I could bounce off and go north. And for that, I'm grateful. Sometimes the people that hurt us the most can actually, show us either things to ways not to think, ways of not to be. We can learn a lot from not only things that we align with, but also things that we feel are exactly what we don't want to be.
And feel free to put questions in the chat if there's anything anyone else would like to ask.
I'll springboard off that about my parents is that I was able at the gathering place, and could be helpful to other people that might be going through the same situation of caring for their older parents, is that I created the cemetery at my gathering place where I could go talk with them and say things that I could never tell them when they were alive. And that was very therapeutic for me to be able to voice that and have a voice where I could never have done that before. So it was healing in my body. I was moving trauma through my body by having those conversations, difficult conversations with my parents at the gathering place. Because we kind of carry them with us, right?
If only the parts voice narrative in our heads that we're saying these things, right? But the
Yeah,
intentionality that goes with expressing that, I think, can be really therapeutic.
right.
Um, can we talk a little bit about this word disequilibration?
Oh, right. It's really anything that sets you out of balance. And again, when I did my timeline, I could point to all of the things that throughout my life I either allowed to bring me off balance or it was just situational. But it was important for me to identify the why. And so I could see how, for some reason, I have this innate tenacity and resilience that I was able to right myself from being so off balance. Um, and I see others, my own brother wasn't able to, spinning out of control. He was never able to hone it in and find his center and to have an honest relationship with himself. And he had an early death. So I really don't take that lightly because not every person can find this. Um, I can't tell you why I made it, my brother didn't, my adoptive brother.
We have time for a question or two, and I'm going to put some links in the chat for. I have put actually a link already for your books and where to find you on the web, so everyone can learn more about your work and read
Great.
read
And
your
it,
books. And then I'm also going to put some information in the chat for. Um, where to find recordings and other program offerings from Adoption Network Cleveland, um, and then also where to do a survey. One of the things that we love is being able to have your feedback on what you're interested in and what's you'd like to see more of and all of that good stuff. So we can take a look at that as we finish up. Any other questions?
I would like to challenge everyone to challenge the stories that you're telling yourself and self-limiting doubts of limitations of you can't do something or you'll always be this. And I invite you to breathe fully and challenge those thoughts and be amazed at the things that might result from breaking free from that false narrative.
Seeing some thumbs up on that. Very good.
Thank you. And if anyone's an Audible fan, I did some hard work in a recording studio to record Audible.
You
That's
did a
hard.
great job. I listened to it on Audible and I
Oh,
thought that
thank
was,
you.
yeah, it was wonderful. It's nice to hear someone tell their story in their own voice. I think that's really special to be able to do.
It's
Um,
actually healing on a whole nother level because emotional things would come up and I would have to pause and breathe and come back to it and give myself grace that I needed a moment. But there is a healing that is just even the writing, it's beyond writing your story, telling your story in your own words. It's finding your voice. Important.
that's great. Yes. And there's some really sweet feedback from Julia in the chat. Um, we'll be sending out an email with resources that were shared and the recording later on, so everyone can watch that. Sarah?
I think this is really, really getting down to the meat of the matter of being adopted, being in addicted households. Um, but I guess my question would be, at what point were you able to even become aware of the traumatic events that need to be healed? And the reason I ask that is because through uh, extensive therapy and, getting sober and just, each step leading to the next step, um, it's getting kind of late in life and I'm just now beginning to tap into the memories.
Yeah.
So, would it be your suggestion to just go with the flow? I guess what I'm saying is I begin to feel like I might not be here having gone through everything and healed everything. Does that make sense? I mean,
Are you asking? I mean, I think we heal in layers, that it doesn't come all at one time, and one thing leads to another, of one idea adds on to another understanding. And then, the following week, you hear the same thing and you understand it on an even deeper level. And I think as long as we remain open and willing to hear and create space within ourselves, more opportunity happens. Are you saying that you're frustrated that it took so long, or?
I don't even feel frustrated at this point. I feel uh, really calm for the first time in my life, but
Yeah.
noticing that n- awareness of memories are just now, I mean, I'm 74 years old.
Yeah.
Things are just now beginning to come up. Some of the memories that I'm having are clear back at 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm asking, is that how you experienced things that they just
Yes.
come up?
Yes. And I remained in situations that are conducive to remembering things, meaning that somatic experiencing of where you are gardening or you have your feet in the dirt or you take a walk in nature, all of those things foster a feeling of safety, and your brain is now saying it's safe enough to give you this memory.
Oh,
Yeah. And I had, yeah, I had a profound experience in my garden. That's why I chose that one, because I was smelling the dirt, I was watching things grow, and then all of a sudden I remembered a very traumatic memory that um, I hadn't thought of since college. I was like, how could I not have remembered that? But I think the brain, gives it to us a piece at a time when it feels like when we're ready and we have enough space within us to receive it.
okay. This is really good. I mean, this is really getting down. I mean, I can feel the vibration of so much of the stuff that you were saying. It it's weird to say that, but I mean,
No, it's wonderful.
it's
I get
so I
euphoric about it now.
good.
I really do, because
Okay.
I can think about my past trauma without getting re-traumatized. I
Yeah.
hold it right
Okay.
here, and I'm more curious about it than traumatized. And
Right.
isn't
Okay.
that interesting? And that because I'm online with uh, my feelings of clarity and calmness, and they call it the 8 C's of in IFS, of where when you're in health, when you're in core self health, you have compassion, clarity, creativity, curiosity, um, a lot, all the 8. But those come back when fear and anxiety are no longer clouding your window, because they're offline if you're hypervigilant. And so that's why I'm really on my quest, is because I want the good stuff. I want that creativity to come back. And the less anxious and fearful I am, the more I'm receiving. So I'm
Wow.
excited for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Sarah. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks.
Um, and to everyone here, if you could take a moment and complete that survey like we asked. We appreciate everyone being here that joined us tonight. And thank you so much for sharing so much with us tonight, Linda, and for volunteering your time and writing these books.
Yeah.
Adoption Network Cleveland is a nonprofit organization serving individuals and families impacted by adoption, kinship, and foster care through support, education, and advocacy. We're a membership organization, and we hope that you'll consider joining as a member to help keep our programs going. To find out more about our organization and to support our work, please visit our website at adoptionnetwork.org. And we hope that you'll join us in the future for the remainder of our future Monday evening speaker series programs. We have Deborah Jagstein, who's returning she'll be here to discuss her book. And we appreciate you all being here tonight. We look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks, everyone.